Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I'm talking to you about part 12 of 30 with my series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. Again, we're still in the leadership development section relative to the transformation equation back in chapter 6. Today, I'm talking to you about chapter 12. Last time we talked about chapter 11, developing high-impact individuals. Today, chapter 12 is about developing high-impact team players. So the difference is the last section was talking about developing the individual to help them become a high-impact individual, developing their character, helping them be a high performer, helping them be highly effective as an individual. That's in preparation because that becomes the foundation for what I'm talking to you about in this chapter. Now that I'm a high impact individual, I can be that person who, when I join a team, I'm adding to the team. I'm not taking away from the team. I'm ready to go. If the team's ready to go, I'm ready to go. If they're not ready to go, I'm ready to help the leader get them ready to go. That's what chapter 11 was about. Helping you grow and develop high-impact individuals who can contribute to the team as a high-impact team player, which again is what we're talking about here today. And I'll tell you, again, I have a resource for this. Remember, this book is a guide, a roadmap. So I'm referencing resources in here for the leader who wants to go transform their culture. I've got a list of resources. You know, Rhea and I have 26 books now, and 6 journals she's also got. So we got a ton of resources to help with cultural transformation. So I'm telling the leader what they need to do. They're going to need a lot more resources than the one from us that I'm recommending in different chapters of this book. But I'm recommending, if you don't know any other sources, this is where you start. If you like my 30 chapter, 3-page format for book studies, I'm giving you some stuff, some books, some resources to go take your team to the next level. You know, last time I meant to share a quote, and it kind of fits right here in the transition. It's a quote by Mark Miller. And Mark is the VP of Leadership Development at Chick-fil-A. He says, when you invest in emerging leaders, it means you're serious about creating the future rather than just hoping it works out. That's pretty powerful. I'm going to say it one more time. When you invest in emerging leaders, it means you're serious about creating the future rather than just hoping it works out. And again, that's what I talked to you about last time, developing high-impact individuals. And now I'm going to talk to you about helping them learn how to perform well as a team. Because what you're truly doing is you're developing leaders. You're filling the pipeline for your organization. You want everybody to be a high-impact leader. It doesn't matter if they're a frontline, entry-level person. You want them to be high-impact leaders. That's what you got to have as a high-performance team. Everybody is a high-impact leader. So I'm walking you through now kind of how do you go develop that person and help them become that leader. So help team members. What you want to do is help team members. Now that they're high-impact individuals, you want to help them learn how to be while they're doing what they do. Because how they are, how they're being, is going to determine how well other people like to work with them. If people want them on their team or off their team. Again, it's your character. But now it's not just my character of leading myself well. It kind of is, but now I'm including others. To be a high-impact individual, I just got to lead myself well. To be a high-impact team player, I have to lead myself well in a way that attracts others to me, especially high impact individuals. If I don't lead myself well, high impact individuals who do are not going to be attracted to me. So I'll share with you a quote here from Jack Clark. He says, leadership is an ability and responsibility for all. Our definition of leadership is the ability to make those around you better and more productive. There's a reason I put that in this chapter on developing high impact team players. That's what we want to do. High impact team players have the ability to make those around them better and more productive. They're leading each other. They're pumping each other up. You've seen these teams. Hopefully you've had the privilege of being a part of one of these teams. But a mediocre team cannot even come close to competing with a high impact, a high performance team full of high impact players. You can't compete. That's why I'm telling you, this book is a roadmap and guide to help you create that team, whether you have 10 or 10,000. If you have 10,000, it's going to take you a little bit longer, but you got to do the exact same thing. These are principles. They apply in every industry, no matter the size, no matter the product. So when you develop high impact individuals, you're building the foundation upon which high impact team players can be developed. I mentioned that a minute ago, but I want you to see how this book, every chapter builds upon itself as I go through and teach you these, in-depth teaching on the components of the transformation equation. First, you help your team members learn to lead themselves well. Then you help them learn to intentionally, this is the key word, you want to help them learn how to intentionally work effectively with others. You got to shift from me to we. You got to go from a me mindset to a we mindset. And I love this quote. It's in several of my books. It's from Peyton Manning, and I share it quite often because I just think it's awesome. He says, the most valuable player is the one that makes the most players valuable. What that is, he's describing that as the MVP. The most valuable player is the one that makes the most players valuable. That's what I call a high impact team player. Imagine if you've got the entire team are MVPs, using his words. That's powerful. So the resource I have for you here relative to this chapter is my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork. So a leader who's wanting to go dive down into this section, this chapter, and then go execute, I'm telling them at the end of this chapter, I've got a link to my page where I talk about that book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, the subtitle, 30 Traits of High Impact Players. Every chapter starts with the word be, B-E. That's what the entire teamwork book is about. Again, how to be while you're doing what you do. This book, everybody needs it at every level. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO or you're the frontline entry-level worker. It doesn't matter. I'll just read off maybe the first 5-10 chapters just so you can understand what's in the teamwork book. The first one is be growth-oriented. Imagine if I'm on a team and I'm not growth-oriented. Everybody else is, but I'm not. I'm going to stick out in the wrong way. Be trustworthy. Again, imagine if I'm not trustworthy, but I'm on somebody sticks me on a high-performance team. Everyone's trustworthy, but I'm not. I'm not going to make it. I want everybody around me to be trustworthy, and I got to do my part. Be humble. Be responsible. Be positive. Be flexible. Be focused. Be disciplined. Be intentional. Be driven. So those are the first 10 out of 30 chapters. Think about those traits that I just read off. Growth-oriented, trustworthy, humble, responsible, positive, flexible, focused, disciplined, intentional, driven. Those are traits of a high-performance team member. High-performance, high-impact team player. You get everybody understanding this. First, you got to get them right as an individual. You got to get their values aligned with traits of a high-impact individual. Again, that's blue-collar leadership. This book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, now helps me learn how do I go work effectively with others. That's how I have to be. I have to be a certain way to fit in with a high-performance team. So if I've never done this type of stuff in my organization, I got to build everything from scratch. Because if I don't have a high-performance team, odds are I'm repelling any high-performance team members we get, any high-impact individuals, any high-impact players, any high-impact leaders who come into our organization or who may develop themselves while they're in my organization. Those people are probably going to move on. They're going to outgrow our organization as a whole if it's not growing. That's why it's so important to grow and develop people, because people who are growing and developing do not want to be on a team of people who are not growing and developing. Common sense, but it ain't common practice for most leaders, especially in blue-collar industries, to grow and develop the people beyond competency. Most of them will do what's required. They have to make sure they know how to do the job, but this is about how to be while you're doing the job. Are you building trust or distrust? When you're creating a high-impact culture, your goal is to make as many of your team members as valuable to the organization as possible. Now, when you do that, you're also making them very valuable to other organizations. That's okay. That's the way it works. Your job is to create an atmosphere and an environment and a team of people who attracts, and the key word is retains, top talent. Everybody else is going to want your people. But because you have a high performance team and you have a high impact culture, most of the competition out there does not have that. And if once you get a track record, once you've been doing this for a couple of years and everybody on the team knows who you are, and you've repelled the people who don't want to be a part of who you are, and now everybody who is still there, especially if you get into 3 to 4 or 5 years out of doing this nonstop, those people understand who we are. They want to be a part of this team. Somebody else tries to steal them, they may listen to them, but they're going to interview them more than they're being interviewed. They're going to ask them, what do they do with leadership development? And when they stumble around and stutter and flutter and flip-flop because they don't really do nothing, well, the folks on your team are going to understand they don't do nothing. They don't want to go join that team. They're going to stay right here where they're at. It's going to take a rare organization. If you're doing what I'm teaching you in this book, it's going to take someone who's doing the same exact thing at a higher level to be able to take your best people. And even if you lose your best people, it doesn't matter. You hate to see them go, but you got a pipeline full. And most of the time, when that best person leaves, whoever steps in, whoever you bring up, usually they got new ideas, fresh ideas. They've been waiting to unleash them so your organization actually gets better. And then they help you grow and develop more people to fill the pipeline. Don't worry about it. What you want to do again, when you're creating a high-impact culture, your goal is to make as many of your team members as valuable to the organization as possible. That means a high degree of competency, and most importantly, a high degree of character. It's about far more than getting them to do their job and perform their task. You should see each of your team members as a brand ambassador for your organization. Think about that. I'm going to call them managers because most of them are not high-impact leaders. They're managers of people. Managers of people do not see the people on their team as brand ambassadors. CEOs and business owners who don't truly value people, who don't value the kind of stuff I talk about on my podcast, they don't see their team members as brand ambassadors. But that's exactly what everybody is. When they walk out that door every day and they talk to the public, whoever that is, or maybe suppliers or customers walk through your door and talk to them, whenever they open their mouth and they talk about your company, the leaders in that company, how the company is operated, they're being brand ambassadors. They're either giving you positive word of mouth advertisement or negative word of mouth advertisement. That's huge. You can put whatever advertisement you want on the side of your vehicles, on a big billboard, on a TV, on a radio, on social media. But what matters most is what people are saying. What the people working in the organization has far more to do with what type of people, what caliber of people you're going to attract or repel. I'm telling you, this is a big leadership nugget. If you're the top leader, you have to understand your team members, every single one of them, whether you got 10 or 10,000 or 100,000, every one of them is a brand ambassador. Every one of them. Every day. Everywhere they go. That's why this stuff is so important. Again, if you just want to keep searching for good people, you don't have to do any of this stuff I'm telling you. You already know how to search for good people. You already know it's hard. That ain't what this book is about. This book is helping you attract great people. Because remember what I said early on in this series? It's a whole lot easier to compete when you're attracting great people instead of searching for good people. I'm teaching you how to attract great people. You don't have to do it, but I'm telling you right now, you can't compete with someone who does. Someone asked me recently, we were conducting, Rhea and I were speaking on a video call, a video podcast with a house call pros. They got a show called Pro Calls for their members, and we were featured on there. And the question come up about, oh man, I lost my thought. Trying to think of the name of the company that we was talking to. Now I lost my thought. Anyway, I'll come back to it. You can rewind and figure out what I was going to say, but I ain't got the option to do that at the moment. I'm trying to get it. I might have to let it go. Anyway, it happens when I speak on stage too. You know what? I don't worry about it because I got 1,000 things I want to tell you. I just don't get to tell you that one thing that I want to tell you at this moment. So the difference between a high impact player and a low impact player is their values. The difference between a high impact player and a low impact player is their values. Again, that's your role. To teach these values, to model these values, you and the leadership team. So here's what I was going to tell you about the house call pros, the pro calls. The host on there was asking us, how do people stay in business if they don't do this? That was a great question. A lot of times when I'm speaking on the stage, I'll talk about it because I talk so big about all this stuff. That's because I want to help you slay the dragon. But people will say, if this is such a big deal, how do people get away with not doing this? I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because their competition is not doing it. Most people are not doing this. Pick an industry in any kind of town, go to that town, find people who are competing in the industry. Most people are not doing this. I'm going to tell you what, when one starts doing this, the others can't compete. They may be able to compete in general, but they're not going to be able to compete for the top talent. But they won't be able to compete in general for long, because I'll tell you what, if I'm doing this and you're my competition, you're not doing this. Maybe I hadn't been doing it till I heard this podcast and I got serious. So a year or two down the road, you realize you're losing your best people and they're coming to me. That's because my brand ambassadors, who I'm growing and developing, are talking to their friends. They're talking to the world about what we're doing as we build this high-performance team and we transform our culture. So as we bring in top talent, see, I've heard something a long time. My whole life I've heard this. People say it all the time, and I disagree 100%, but I hear it all the time. People say if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. I believe that's only true if everybody always does what they've always done. If everybody always does what they've always done, everybody will always get what they always got. See, that ain't how the world works. Some people are trying to get better. Some people are trying to improve. And if I'm improving my organization and you're not, and we're competing, I promise you, I'm going to get more and you're going to get less. What I'm saying is I'm going to get more of the top talent. Because I get more of the top talent, we're going to get more of the business. When I'm getting top talent and we're getting more of the business, you're going to get less of the business if you're competing with me. That's why this stuff is so critical, especially if you're in your industry, in your area. No one's doing this. You have a competitive advantage waiting for you to just take. Says easy and it does hard. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And you can't measure. It's not something easy to measure. It's not easy to quantify it, like productivity or scrap or all these other metrics. What it takes here is a high impact leader who understands this stuff. They don't worry about the numbers. They know the numbers are going to get better. All the numbers, all the metrics going to get better if I do this. And it's not going to happen this afternoon, but it's going to happen. Values determine how your team, how they think and what they do. A lot of them have never even thought about their values. I know I worked in manufacturing 20 years. I worked for multi-billion-dollar organizations. They never taught me about values. We didn't even teach. They didn't teach it. We didn't talk about it. We worried about production and safety and quality. We didn't worry about values. I'm sure somewhere there was some values written on a wall. Who knew what they were? Who tried to model them? Who was teaching about it? Nobody. You see, high impact players don't just do things different because their character is different. They are different. Let's say that again. High impact players don't just do things different because their character is different. They are different. That's what I'm getting at. They're not just doing things different. They're different. Like sometimes people tell me, people I used to know, family members or friends, I've heard, not that much anymore, but when I really started transforming, people say, you think you're better than us. That's why I quit coming around. No, I just think I'm different. They're different than me and I'm different from them. Doesn't mean I'm better or worse. I'm different. I'm going to do things different because I'm different. But when you adopt and apply what I'm teaching in this book and my other books that I use to support this book, you're building a foundation. You're helping people become different. They have to choose it, but you're creating an atmosphere that facilitates it if your leaders are modeling it. High impact cultures require a lot of fuel because the people are hungry for growth. It's not something you just start and get it going and then you walk off. Kind of like a flywheel. Imagine a big flywheel, and it's real hard to get it spinning and turning. That's the way this is going to be. You grab that big wheel, let's say it's like a 10-foot, super heavy, 2-foot thick steel flywheel sitting on the end of a shaft, and you're going to try to spin it. It's got bearings and they freed up, but it's heavy. You got to grab that thing, you get it moving. Once you get it moving, you can kind of keep it going. But if you want it to go faster, you got to do a lot more work. When you walk away, no matter how fast it's going, when you walk away from it, at that moment, it begins to slow down. That's what happens with leadership development, cultural transformation. If you truly want it to happen, it never stops. You can't stop. That's why you got to grow and develop a team of people, and they're going to be hungry. A lot of times when I go introduce this to clients, the hungry people, they come up afterwards. They want more books. They want more sessions. Now the leader's got to figure out, how do I feed these hungry people? And a lot of times it's not the top leader who's the hungriest. Sometimes it's those folks on the front lines. And see, this is the challenge. This is the burden. When these people get hungry, they're not going to wait on the leader. They're going to find my podcast. They're going to start listening to it. They're going to read my books. They're going to read other people's books. They're actually doing exactly what that leader wants them to do. They're becoming a high impact individual. But if that leader is not growing and developing themselves or have already done it and still doing it, they're going to lose their top talent. The top talent's going to outrun them. But see, it doesn't have to be that way. If I understand what's going on, what I'm teaching you in this book, I'm going to engage that person. I'm going to buy them extra books. I'm going to have them start, hey, read this book. I know we just heard Mack speak today for the first time. You fired up. Here, I'm going to get you another book. You read this book, write me a 1-2 page outline. Come talk to me about it. You get somebody hungry, you get a leader who just does something simple as that, that's feeding the hungry. That's keeping them engaged. They're not going to go anywhere. They're engaged with you as a leader. They're going to build a tremendous amount of influence with you. They may outgrow you. But it's okay if you keep them on the team. They're going to outgrow you, which is going to lift you up. You're going to lift up the rest of the team members. All you have to do is create engagement. If they read a book and they love it, let them start leading book studies. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what their job is. We're going to talk about that later. But I wanted to mention it here a little bit because I was just talking about it. Again, if you don't feed those great people who are hungry for growth, someone else will. And they're going to do it anyway. These people are hungry. They want to do more, be more, have more, contribute more. If you don't feed them, someone else will. And they're happy to eat at your table. But you got to put something on the table. All right. I'll give you a closing quote here and we'll wrap up this episode. It's from Malcolm Gladwell. He says, when we look at people who disobey their leaders, the first question we ought to ask is not, what's wrong with those people? But rather, what's wrong with their leader? It says that responsibility begins at the top. You're going to hear me talk about that throughout this entire book. Again, I wrote it for the top leader. But I want to make sure when the top leader is listening and anyone else, the top leader is responsible. Whatever's going on in the organization or not going on in the organization, the top leader can make it happen or stop it from happening. Can allow it to happen or not allow it to happen. Can make it happen or make sure it doesn't happen. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.